Trump left the G7 summit early and urgently returned to Washington to address the escalating Iran situation. He held a closed-door lunch with visiting Pakistan Army Chief Asim Munir, clearly aiming to gather more information about Iran through Pakistan's military, struggling to make a decision, and thus announced he would decide within 2 weeks. Essentially, he wants to force Iran to concede through diplomatic means while letting Israel and Iran wear each other out, allowing the U.S. to intervene at the most advantageous moment with minimal cost for maximum gain. Asim Munir stayed in Washington for over a week, and this informal private friendship demonstrates Pakistan's high strategic value. Trump's courtesy toward Asim Munir completely infuriated Indian media. Modi has served as America's watchdog for 11 years, paying a huge price, getting battered by Chinese forces at the border, humiliated by Pakistan in air combat, and missing out on the global division of labor, becoming a political, economic, and technological island, a global laughingstock. Yet Americans show no regard for India's or Modi's dignity, with Trump leaving the G7 summit early, which Modi had carefully prepared for, without issuing even a courtesy bilateral statement with India, instead rushing back to dine with Pakistan's army chief, essentially broadcasting a global slap in the face to India and Modi. It must be said that Trump's businessman traits are fully evident. He has no interest in procedural meetings like the G7 summit, caring only about securing more benefits. Even in talks with host Carney, both sides did not let friendship overshadow the tariff war, with Carney directly warning the U.S. that Canada is not to be bullied, threatening to impose steel and aluminum tariffs to counter the U.S. if no agreement is reached. It can be said that almost all countries attend the G7 for interests, except Modi, who goes to gild himself and chase vanity. Paki Sharma boasted on her program that India, as a BRICS member, can also showcase its strength at the G7, making it a true major power. Yet India at the G7 is more like a watchdog, with no one paying it any attention. Canadian Prime Minister Carney reluctantly invited Modi at the last moment, and at the venue, few people bothered with him. Trump even openly expressed hope for Russia to rejoin the G7, saying inviting China is also a good idea. But clearly, Putin would not make concessions to Trump for the vanity of a G8. China has no interest whatsoever in joining the G7. The G7 is an organization of 7 major industrial and developed nations, and China's inclusion, from an ideological and economic development perspective, is not suitable. Besides, China does not care about vanity. Its manufacturing output surpasses the G7 combined, making it the true leading industrial nation, with no need to ride the G7's coattails. If the G7 wants to expand and increase global influence, why not speak through the G20? In an era where the G20's influence surpasses the G7's, joining the G7 for vanity holds no real meaning for China. And in the Western-dominated arena, it risks being undermined or slighted in diplomatic protocol. As for BRICS, netizens have long called for expelling India and replacing it with Indonesia. But unfortunately, BRICS has no expulsion mechanism, leaving India, a troublemaker, to linger inside. Truly a misfortune. It can be said that India has no prestige in BRICS, always playing a negative role, despised by most member states. At the G7 summit, Western nations humiliated India as a master would a watchdog. I really cannot see what honor there is in such a status. So why does Indian media boast about it? Returning to Pakistan, its impressive performance in the India-Pakistan air conflict made India a global laughingstock, with no country taking India seriously. In contrast, Pakistan's international status has greatly risen, not only earning U.S. courtesy, but also boosting its prestige among Islamic nations. Pakistan did not dwell on Iran's past closeness with India, instead issuing stern warnings to Israel and announcing nuclear protection for Iran. For a time, Pakistan became a focal point for both the U.S. and China, while India and Modi's government became a clownish group, scurrying around and mocked globally. The root cause of the U.S. repeatedly humiliating India and Modi is India's weak national strength, with per capita GDP lower than Bangladesh, technology inferior to China, and military losses to Pakistan. This country has poor relations with all its neighbors, lacks loyalty, disregards its international reputation, frequently switches masters, and betrays allies. Modi not only betrayed Russia, but also quickly abandoned Iran after its airstrikes. Trump despises such a nation at heart. Since returning to the White House, he has shown no respect for Modi, turning the personal friendship between Modi and Trump, repeatedly hyped by Indian media, into a joke. Trump is a man who admires strength. He does not respect pawns like Zelensky or Modi. On the contrary, he holds special respect for Putin and Xi Jinping, even publicly saying he envies Putin. If he had time, he would rather dine with Kim Jong-un than toss a bone to Modi. For the U.S. right now, the most critical decision is whether to strike Iran and deeply engage in Israel's war. At this moment, Pakistan's importance stands out. Thus, Trump is willing to dine with Asim Munir. As for Modi, he can chase vanity. But what can India offer the U.S.? In Trump's words, Modi holds no cards. Sign a trade deal favorable to the U.S. and kneel quickly. Or not only will the honor of a shared lunch be withheld, but Trump will wield an even bigger stick to make Modi weep.